Hello, and welcome to Crad COVID Readings. I'm Keith R. de Candido, continuing to read my writings to entertain the living hell out of you. Before I start, I want to once again pimp my Patreon, because my Patreon is awesome. There are TV reviews, at least one a month, sometimes more. Movie reviews, exactly one a month. Cat pictures, which I post pretty regularly because I have incredibly cute cats. Excerpts from my work in progress, which are posted once a week. Vignettes featuring my original characters, also once a month. And then anytime I finish something, a chapter or a short story, you have the option to get a first look at my first drafts of those. The tiers range from $1 a month all the way up to $20 a month. And each of those things is a different tier, and you get all the ones at the lower tiers too. So you get really good value for your money. Check it out. It's patreon.com/crad, K-R-A-D, which is my initials, which is also why I call this channel Crad COVID Readings, which you probably already know, so I should probably shut up about that. Anyway, let us continue with War Stories Book 2 from the Starfleet Corps of Engineers series, in which the USS Da Vinci tries to, win the war. Well, not by themselves. Anyway, a sonic driver. A lousy, rotten, stinking sonic driver. Fabian had managed to cobble together the actual components of a standard emergency toolkit from the assorted toolkits on the Da Vinci, all of which were far better equipped than any toolkit he'd worked with on the Defiant or on Deep Space Nine. While he did so, a small device that, to Fabian's experienced eye after serving on a Cardassian-built space station for 2 years, looked to be of Cardassian design, was beamed into the lab. Chief Feliciano had said that Duffy had told the new guy not to touch it. Fabian plotted several types of revenge on Duffy for that crack while he started trying each of the tools on the golf ball. For whatever reason, the emissions of the sonic driver had two effects. They made 110 and 111 wince, and they removed a panel of the golf ball. Said panel had no visible seams until after it came off. How'd you do that? Don't know, don't care, Fabian said to Oka, taking out his tricorder. Then his eyes widened at what the display told him. Wow! He looked over at the binars. Are you two reading what I'm reading? If you are reading several dozen weapon systems, a propulsion system, and a sophisticated computer core, then yes, we are reading what you are reading. Fabian sighed. I wish I could say that was a relief. He was about to tap his comm badge when an indicator light went on over the doorway to the lab. The Da Vinci was at yellow alert. Abramowitz pursed her lips. That can't be good. Never is, Oka muttered. Stevens to Bridge, this may not be the best time, sir, but we've pried open the golf ball and, well, it's interesting. Good job, Stevens. Report, Gold said. Taking this as a sign that he could go on at greater length despite the alert, Fabian said, apparently this is some kind of small mobile weapon. The outer casing is designed to survive space travel and protect the components, which is why we couldn't read it until we got it open. We're going to do a more thorough analysis now, unless there's a more pressing concern? Not for you. We're just playing it safe up here, waiting to see if the Dominion wants to crash the party. Let me know what you find out. We will, sir. Stevens out. He turned to look at the diminutive, bald-headed aliens next to him. Okay, Mutt, Jeff, let's get to work. I am 110. I am 111. There is no Mutt or Jeff here. Again, Fabian sighed. Stick with Duffy for the jokes, he admonished himself. As he ran the tricorder over the golf ball, he decided to brave a question. If you don't mind my asking, how did a couple of Binar civilians wind up on the Da Vinci? None of our kind has ever joined Starfleet, although we have assisted Starfleet in many computer-related endeavors. It was decided that one pairing should serve as observers on a Starfleet Corps of Engineers vessel during this time of war, to render assistance where needed. Smiling, Fabian said, It's very considerate. You consider enlisting for real? The two Binars exchanged glances. We have considered it. Fabian wondered if he had hit upon a sore point. Before he could pursue it, however, two security guards entered. At least Fabian assumed them to be security. True, they were enlisted personnel based on their lack of rank insignia, and the uniforms had the gold trim of operations, but Fabian knew a grunt when he saw one. For one thing, they were armed. For another, they had that tense, coiled look that every security guard he'd ever known had, and that no engineer he'd ever met could master. When engineers got tense, they became all frazzled. When security guards got tense, they shot things. Can I help you guys? Fabian asked. Yellow alert, the shorter, paler one said. SOP is that we stand guard on any projects. Corps breaches orders. Fabian laughed. Corps breach? That's Lieutenant Commander Corsi's nickname behind her back, Oka said with a grin. Nobody's had the guts to say it to her face. Well, the darker, taller guard said with a grin. Not twice, anyhow. He stuck out a hand. I'm Vance Hawkins. Fabian returned the handshake. Fabian Stevens just came in at the starbase. Stephen Drew, welcome to the Looney Bin, Stevens. We have found something. Turning around, Fabian saw that the Bynars looked excited. At what he wasn't sure. They didn't carry tricorders, and they had spent the time since Drew and Hawkins entered communicating with each other in a high-pitched whine. Fabian asked them what they found. We have found access to the computer core of the golf ball. Golf ball? Drew said with a smirk. Oka looked with annoyance at Stevens. See what you've done? Now even the twins are doing it. This is how we wind up with bad names for things. Primly, Abramowitz said, There's nothing wrong with golf balls. Looking at his tricorder, Fabian said, Maybe, but there's a lot not to like about this one. Can you guys access the core? Of course. 110 and 111 said in perfect unison. Then they went back to their high-pitched whine. Looking at Oka, Fabian asked, What is that they're doing? It's a rapid-fire form of communication in straight binary code, moving at a somewhat ludicrous speed. Have you ever tried to translate it? Oka frowned. No. Why would I? Oh, I don't know, Abramowitz said. Maybe get some insight into another culture? That's your job, Oka said with a shrug. It should be our responsibility. Suspecting that he was opening an old argument between these two, Fabian said, Never mind. He turned back to look at the Bynars, who had now placed two hands, one the left hand, the other the right hand, into the opening Fabian had created in the golf ball. Should they be touching it like that? The high-pitched whine got a bit louder, and the Bynars' eyes seemed to roll up into their heads. Fabian noticed that whatever they were saying was perfectly matched. They were uttering their rapid-fire binary code in perfect unison, which, he realized, was why it seemed louder. He had been recording everything with his tricorder already, but now he set it to make a separate record of just the Bynars' utterances and to attempt a translation once they were finished. It was as much for his own curiosity as anything, but he thought it might also provide insight into the golf ball. That's really outstanding. Fabian looked at Oka and Abramowitz, who seemed less than impressed. I mean, that level of communication with the computer, it must just be... He shook his head. Outstanding. Abramowitz smiled. He said that already. Shrugging, Oka said, We've all gotten used to it. A very loud, high-pitched wail cut off any response Fabian might have made. He, and everyone else, turned to see 110 and 111 crying out in what looked like pain. Get them out of that! Oka cried. Even as Hawkins and Drew rushed over to the golf ball, Fabian said, Wait! We don't know what separating them will do! Ignoring this admonition, Hawkins grabbed for 110. That was followed by a flash of light, a massive electrical discharge, and Hawkins being hurled across the lab and into a bulkhead, which he hit with a rather sickening thud. Drew tapped his comm badge even as he backed off from 111. Drew to sickbay. Medical emergency in the lab. On my way, came Tydoan's voice. Neither 110 nor 111 had budged, though they were still screaming. Fabian listened carefully. I think they're still screaming out binary code. Who cares? Oka said. We have to separate them. Open to suggestions, Drew said. Fabian ran over to the assorted tools he found when he was trying to reassemble his toolkit. He needed one particular tool that he'd seen. He was amazed when he saw it before, as he thought his mother was the last person in the galaxy excuse me, who actually had one. Come on, it's in here somewhere. The Bynar screams continued. Finally, he found what he thought might work. As he rummaged, Drew said, What, have you got some super scientific gizmo in there that'll get him out of there? Something like that, Fabian said as he stood up, holding a long piece of metal with two prongs at the end of it. One of the prongs was movable. Drew frowned. What the hell is that? A wrench. Fabian rummaged some more and found a pair of non-conductive gloves. Everybody stand back, he said as he put them on. Abramowitz and Oka did so. Drew did not, but stayed about a meter behind Fabian. Fine, if Mr. Security Guard wants to keep an eye on me, who am I to say no? Slowly, Fabian approached the golf ball. 110's, or was it 111's? Left hand was in the left-hand port of the opening, with 111's, or 110's, right hand in the right-hand part. Both their mouths were wide open, letting loose with a maddening barrage of high-pitched ones and zeros. This close, Fabian could see the arc of electricity linking them to the golf ball. Indeed, that was all that linked them. Neither hand was actually touching any part of the inner workings of the golf ball, which made Fabian's life easier. I hope to hell this works. He shoved the wrench in under 110's, or 111's, hand. A flash of light encompassed his eyes, and the next thing Fabian knew, he was lying on the floor, on top of something rather lumpy and feeling a bit dazed. What happened? He said in a slurred voice. You fell on top of me is what happened, came a muffled voice from under him, which he realized was Drew. Clambering into a standing position, Fabian chuckled. I did tell you to stand back. Drew also got upright. Remind me to listen to you next time. Fine, listen to me next time. Sighing, Drew said, Yeah, you're going to fit in just fine here. He looked around. Fabian did likewise. He was at once glad to see that 110 and 111 were now separated from the golf ball, and distressed to see them unconscious, possibly dead, on the floor. Little boxes they each wore in their belts, some kind of processing unit he knew, were broken and smoking, small components falling onto the deck next to them. Tydoan entered then, along with two other people, one an older human male, the other a young human female, all in blue-trimmed uniforms. "What is it this time?" Bolian asked. Then he noticed the security guard against the bulkhead. "Not Hawkins again. I'm just going to give him his own damn bunk in sickbay. Copper, Wetzel, look him over. I'm going to take a look at the twins." The other two started examining Hawkins, while the elderly Bolian knelt down next to 110 and 111. As he ran the scanner over them, he started muttering, "Damn stupid engineers sticking their noses in where they don't belong, and then they wonder why they're hurt all the time. Should just retire and be done with it." "Will they be okay, Doctor?" Fabian asked. Tydoan ignored Fabian as he finished his examination. Then he stood upright, groaning. Fabian thought he heard the Bolian's knees actually crack. "They'll be fine," he finally said. "Bynars can take a heaping dose of a juice, but this was more than a heaping dose. I'll bring him down to sickbay, and that won't be necessary." Fabian looked down and saw that the Bynars were both starting to rise. "Hang on, you two," Tydoan said. "You both took a major jolt. The jolt we took is well within standard Bynar tolerances, Doctor." As they spoke, Fabian's tricorder beeped. He looked down at the display, and his jaw became unhinged. This isn't good. Quickly, he switched his tricorder off and purged the records of the Bynar's utterances, suddenly quite grateful that he'd isolated them. "We thank you for your concern, but it is unwarranted. Besides, we have critical information that we must impart to Captain Gold right away." Fabian looked at Tydoan. "I'm afraid they're right, Doctor." "Fine." The doctor threw up his hands. "Don't take care of yourselves. What do I care?" He walked over to Hawkins. "Stevens to Gold?" Fabian said, tapping his comm badge. "We have some more information on the golf ball, sir, and it's not good." 15 minutes later, Fabian sat in the observation lounge along with Gold, Corsi, and the two Bynars. They had waited that long to have this meeting only because 110 and 111 needed to replicate new data boxes. Apparently, their ability to function as a slow enough level to interact with other life forms was aided considerably by those boxes, and without them, they'd never be able to process data slowly enough for anyone else to understand them. "The golf ball appears to be a multi-purpose weapon, Captain," Fabian said, calling up the sensor schematics from his tricorder on the lounge's view screen. "Its housing, as I said before, is the same as that used by the Jem'Hadar for their torpedoes. It can survive the ravages of space and of atmosphere with little difficulty. It's also equipped with 3 different miniaturized directed energy weapons of similar design to that of a Jem'Hadar warship." "How powerful?" Corsi asked. "The yield is roughly equivalent to that of a Defiant-class ship's phasers." "Gewalt," Gold muttered. "There's more, I'm afraid." Fabian touched a control, and the image focused on another component of the inner workings. "What you're looking at there is a propulsion system that allows the golf ball to travel at speeds up to full impulse. In addition, it contains a computer core that is very complex, which 110 and 111 were able to commune with briefly. We are still recovering from the shock, but we learned that the device is capable of independent motion and firing based on a sophisticated artificial intelligence." Corsi shook her head. "A self-sufficient, self-directing, obscenely fast mobile weapon?" "More than that, we're afraid, Lieutenant Commander." Gold shook his head. "Much more I don't think I could take." "The golf ball can transmit a computer virus." Fabian smiled wryly. "It almost hit my tricorder. I was recording what 110 and 111 were saying, and they were screaming the code for the virus. Luckily, I purged it before it got too far, though if they'd gone on much longer..." "We have already begun a diagnostic on all the computers of the ship to make certain that no other systems besides Mr. Stevens' tricorder were affected." Gold leaned back in his chair. Fabian thought it was interesting that, while Corsi looked a frightening combination of appalled and angry, Gold only looked thoughtful, and not nearly as shocked as Fabian would have expected, almost as if he knew what was coming. "How pervasive," the captain asked after a moment, "would this virus be?" "It transmits in machine language. There is no known computer system that would not be vulnerable to it, in theory." Leaning forward, Gold asked, "In practice?" "We believe that we were in contact with the program long enough to devise a countermeasure." "Good." Again he leaned back. "In a set of reports from Starfleet Intelligence that I received 2 weeks ago, they mentioned that the Dominion was working on something like this. The mobility, they mentioned. The weapons, they mentioned. The virus, they didn't mention. They also thought the prototype would be ready to go within a month." Corsi pursed her lips. 2 weeks is within a month. That's what both Admiral Ross and I were afraid of when they found that thing. And now we learn that it's worse than we thought. "Red alert! Captain Gold to the bridge." Gold tapped his comm badge even as the alert lights bathed the observation lounge in a red glow. "Report, McAllen." 2 Galler-class Cardassian warships and a Jem'Hadar strike ship have warped into the system, sir. The Appalachia and the Sloan are moving to intercept. Damn. Get us between them and the relay. Our priority is to protect the away team. Gold to Salak. Salak here. The Dominion just came to find out what happened to their beacon, Commander. How much more time do you need? For a satisfactory repair, 19 minutes, 10 seconds. For a repair that will suffice until such a time as this star system is more secure, 4 minutes, 30 seconds. Good. Gold rose from his seat and headed toward the exit. Transporter room, this is Gold. Get a lock on the away team and beam them back here. The door is closed on him, leaving Fabian with Corsi 110 and 111. The security chief rose from her chair and headed toward the other exit. Excuse me? Corsi stopped, turned, and regarded Fabian with a look that made the engineer want to crawl under the table for the next 6 months. What? I knew. I don't really know what my duty station is during Red Alert. In a tight voice, Corsi said, unless you've been given a specific duty assignment, which you obviously haven't, you were to report to your quarters. Without another word, Corsi turned on her heel and left. Is she always that direct? Fabian asked the Binars. No, 110 said. Usually she is worse. 111 added. Lovely. Well, I guess I should go to my quarters. Fabian hadn't even been to his quarters since he came on board. And to think, I gave up Utopia Planitia for this. To be concluded next week, where we'll finish off War Stories Book 2 and finish our little digression to the Da Vinci's past before moving back into their present. Thank you very much for watching. Check me out online at decandido.net. My blog is at decandido.wordpress.com. And as I said at the top of the episode, you can check me out on Patreon at patreon.com/crad and support me in my endeavors. See you next week, and please stay safe. Bye.